right, well, this is Aaron Squire coming at you guys again on a Saturday of all things. We got episode 74 coming at you. We're calling this 10,000 Years of Spiders. Yes, we've got a Spiders deck to do tonight. We've got a bunch of PvE stuff to get caught up on. We've got, let's see, what else have I got here? The 5 Shards tournament I know is a little while back. We're going to talk about that and what that means for the future, and then we're going to mention the ESL as well. I got Jadiim Jedi on the show. I spent a lot of time with him at the convention. In fact, I spent a long period of time just being stuck in a car with him learning about whipping nays. And if you don't know what that is, you could just go look that up. I'm not going to go through the whole story because it just won't be funny because you weren't there, but it was pretty crazy. Jadiim Jedi, how you feeling? How you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's nice to be able to play in some more competitive tournaments here myself as well. Instead of just doing shoutcasting all the time, it's nice to be able to do that as well too.
Right, you're talking about the ESL. So you played last week in the ESL?
I did. I played in the ESL last weekend. Nothing to write home for as far as my results there, but had a good time, and I'll be playing again this weekend.
How many rounds did you make it? Because it's single elimination, right?
Yeah, just the second round.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on to some of the news. So I know I'm doing a lot of catch-up work because we've been out for like 3 weeks on Deck Build with Squire, but I just wanted to say congratulations to Sirius on the show. Just make sure he gets the recognition that he deserves. If you haven't seen him, you know, or if you haven't been over to his channel, make sure you're going over there and following him. He's probably one of the, you know, at least the top 5 Hex streamers. He's done a lot of great stuff for the community, and he's going to have this awesome card with this art on it. I can't wait to see this card. It looks like some sort of a knight, maybe in some sort of a diamond, or maybe ruby, or maybe diamond ruby, or maybe diamond ruby sapphire. I don't know what it's going to be, but it looks exciting. Jadiim Jedi, you were there. Like, we were all actually told everyone needs to be over here, like behind them. That's the Hex pit, and they were like, everyone go to the Hex pit, and we were all thinking, okay, we're going to go from there and then do like a dinner with the developers and stuff like that. So like everybody was surprised at what happened when he was named as the second Exalted. And so yeah, Jadiim Jedi, thoughts on that?
Yeah, Cyrus definitely deserves it, and he's a good friend of mine, so I was really happy for him to see that. I also think there are some other deserving people that will get it in the not too distant future, but yeah, definitely happy to see it, and really, really awesome for Cyrus to get that.
I always say serious. I don't know why I do that.
He was very surprised too. Like
he like started clapping and looking around, like, yeah, the next Exalted. All right, let's do this.
Wait,
it's you. It's you. It's you. You know,
it was
pretty funny.
Surprised.
Yeah, very humble guy. So moving on, we had some great PvE stuff that they were allowed to show us at the Hex booth. We weren't allowed to take pictures of it because they actually told us that they just threw this together just so we could try it out at the convention and see our reactions and stuff like that. So it's very incomplete. Some of the stuff that they're not showing on the board here is if you go up to this star, there was another path to the right and then south. So you had to actually, after you defeated this boss, you had to make a choice. And once you make one of those choices, you're not allowed to go back and then try and do the other path. So you have to start the whole content over to do that again. And some other interesting things, like when you played Inferno, it would catch the forest on fire and other little like aesthetic things. I think that did something else as well. And on top of that, like your champions would gain like extra charge powers as you played the PvE content, and you actually got some decisions and some choices with that. So you could like sculpt your champion as you went. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I got to play a bit of it as well. It was cool because the decisions that they gave you for the PvE were not necessarily to where they were all goody two shoe choices. Like you could take the path that was sort of evil, or I don't know. I guess evil is really the best word for it. Like there was one. I guess she was a fairy. She kind of looked like a fairy, but she said that I'm here to help you, and I have some words of wisdom for your next battle. And basically you could
be mean to her. Yeah.
Yeah, you could say, forget you, I don't need your help. She said, are you sure? It's like,
screw fairies.
Yeah, go away or I will burn you alive, or something like that, something absurd. And I took that path just because I wanted to see what would happen.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there's limitations to, like, when you're only doing this one thing, and it's like, 4 different things can happen, and then there's a bunch of text. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
I remember
to see more.
somebody talked about a battle with some bandits, and I was like, "What bandit battle are you talking about?" Apparently, I missed that entirely because of the path I chose.
You probably went south. I think south you go and you fight like a tree guy or something that's like killing like villagers, and then if you go to the right, I think the bandits are up this road over here. I think that's what I want to say they are. So yeah, pretty interesting. They also talked about Titania, or which I guess is what, you know, basically is the namesake of this season right now, for what's going on with the meta. But that's the actual artist, and she's done a lot of our vampires and stuff. I'm guessing she did not do the art on Titania's Majesty, or maybe she did. I don't even know.
I'm not the best person to answer.
Right. I guess one of my viewers will correct me, I'm sure, on that. Next thing on the docket is the Warriors Got Talent. So this update was the one that was just this past week. Just yesterday they released this, and they basically talk about how last year there was the might system, and you were going to grow throughout the dungeon. There was going to be like 5, you were going to level up like 5 times, and that has gone out the window. It's completely gone. The might system is gone right there. Might system is gone. So moving on to what we saw at the convention, we actually saw that huge 25-point talent tree for the warrior, and they actually have it so you can save it as a link. I think this is so people can start throwing this on their forum, you know, so that way, like, every time they post, they'll be like, yeah, I'm a warrior, or I'm a priest, or whatever else. So it's pretty exciting to see. A lot of the stuff in the deck was like adding on more cards as your minimum. It was like, you know, you started out with like a 60 card deck, and then you have to have like 65 and then 70 cards in your deck. And then there was like some of the things, the free talents were actually like debuffing your deck, where it's like Mortal Wound, where it was like you take damage when you draw it. You just take damage. So some interesting little flavorful things in there. Did you get a good chance to take a look at any of this stuff, JJ, or how do you feel about some of the PvE stuff that you saw?
I did. The talent tree that I saw made me very happy, and for a couple of reasons. For one thing, I'm going to cover the stuff that I think you didn't say yet.
Sure.
They said that they were going to have different mix and matches for the different combinations of both races and classes.
Right.
Try to give abilities that would match what would sort of, you know, what would an orc mage look like versus what would a human mage or an orc cleric, or the other different combinations that you could potentially have there. And there are some races that are definitely more suited towards certain classes, but if you wanted to play a different class for some reason that it wouldn't naturally be good at, they would try to give some abilities to it that would make it kind of cool and interesting, and kind of fit in with what that would be. The Orc Warrior was a great example, very, very clear cut. A lot of the Orc racial traits would work in well with what the Warrior talent tree is trying to do. And there would be, you know, Orc talents that were, if you were an Orc, you always get those Orc talents. But there would also be the Orc Warrior specifically, where if you were an Orc Warrior, you would always get those abilities, versus like Orc Mage or all those other ones. So it was pretty cool. I really liked that. The other thing that was really cool was they don't make it to where you have to go a strict path in order to get certain abilities. So let's say, you know, you really like this one ability, but it's off towards the left side.
Right.
But most of the things that you want would be over on the right side. They made it so that you would be able to like go off a slight path, and you could do things that were like next to each other, but you wouldn't be able to do things that were completely on the other side of the talent tree. You had to be adjacent to it, but then you could continue on like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've seen things like that in other games like World of Warcraft and League of Legends, where they have the talent tree thing, where you basically you're like, well, I really want this, so it's like, well, I have to get a couple of junky talents. I basically am wasting points on these lower tiers in order to get to things, and that doesn't feel good. I understand there's some game balancing that's involved with that, but definitely that's a little bit of a negative player experience for me, at least. So yeah,
having that flexibility was kind of cool.
So moving on, we basically Ben Stoll had talked about becoming a game designer, and he has this whole huge, amazing read here. I actually only made it like halfway through all of this, and I'm going to finish reading it later, as that's something I want to become, later after I finish this stage of my life that I'm in. And yeah, it's just an amazing read. Make sure if you are looking at trying to get into the games industry, and especially in that design realm, that you give this a good read. Or if you're trying to build your own game and just try to do your own thing, then yeah, still another great read to go through. I don't know that you're going to have very much to say to that point, JJ. Did you get a chance to look at it, or?
To be honest with you, I did not get a chance to read through that yet. But I did at least skim it, and I would say it's definitely good advice as far as people who are interested. And obviously, with him being the head of design, like, you want to take these things.
It's been around the block a couple times. I think he knows what he's talking about. Moving on, we've got the VIP weekend next weekend, just as a reminder, and I actually now have VIP again for once. I put some money on that, and I have a chance to get these Carnosaurus, and I'll tell you this much: I love playing the Carnosaurus in my Ruby Wild ramp deck. I love playing it. I play 4 of it because, like, I feel like it's a great counter to having, what's it called? What's the guy that doubles all the spells? Periwinkle. It's a great counter to Periwinkle in the meta right now, and even like older decks when you've got to deal with a Falconeer or something. Carnosaurus he's definitely great. It's a little bit slow as a piece of removal, and you don't always get the body, but you usually get the health. I mean, 2-point removal plus health gain and possible body is just been an amazing card to have in Wild.
That's pretty good value for 2 costs for sure. The only downside is if they're able to remove it in response to the...
Sure, they can stop the effects. And then, of course, there's the Valiant Escort. And we haven't seen this very much. I still feel like there may be a mono diamond deck out there that could use this guy. I toyed with a couple of things, but it didn't seem like it was strong enough. But yeah, make sure you're coming out. It looks like it's going to be constructed.
Constructed, yep.
Or is it? Oh, it says event was flipped to sealed deck. Oh no, it's going to be sealed. It'll be sealed. It says sealed. VIP weekend on the 28th. Last month's. Oh wait. Was flipped to sealed. This month's will be. Oh, never mind. It'll be constructed. So yeah, there you go. Constructed this month.
Yeah, there was some problems. Like last month was supposed to be sealed, or was supposed to be constructed rather, but there was some problems with it. So it ended up getting flipped over to sealed for the rest of the weekend. So they pretty much counted it as sealed, and so now it's constructed. At least that's what I thought. So it looks like the chat is also chiming in saying constructed.
Yeah, and then with the new system, if constructed is not your thing, just hold on to your tickets and then just wait until the next, thing that you might be more interested in, and you might have to do sealed or something like that. Moving on, a couple of weeks ago, there was the Diamond Cup top 8 decks. You guys already talked about this on 2 Turns Ahead. If you guys haven't checked out 2 Turns Ahead, JJ is one of the main people on there. He's on there all the time. Of course, we saw the typical Ruby Wild ramp deck that we've been seeing everywhere that features Titania's Majesty. And of course, we were only allowed to use set 3, so we didn't see maybe as strong a decks as we're going to have in the meta now. But some of the more interesting ones that I saw, and I've named these myself, so we've got the Ruby Diamond, I'm calling it Shift Range, because it's kind of mid-rangey and it's got Shift in it, so that's what I'm calling it. It features this Knock, I guess, because it has a couple of Swift Strikers in there. It's got the Spirit Bound Spies pretty good, and let's see, as far as keeping the buff and that sort of thing. Highlands Black Belt can deal that damage, so yeah, I could see that, sure. Works pretty well, right?
Yeah, we got to see that one in action, and it was a deck that was reasonably good against the Titania decks of that tournament.
Right.
The main deck, Martyrs, there was very good. Having at least a reasonable clock by having the Black Belt or assailant or whatever it was that you happen to have on the field, just keeping them honest and pushing through some damage. And he had a couple solo battles as well, and the duplicitous dupe, which
Deep Gaze is pretty amazing as well. When you're shifting stuff around, he gets really kind of, he buffs your whole field, you know.
Yeah, it can do some good work.
Yeah. I think the big thing about Titanius, at least for me, is like, okay, and you beat me, what was it, in a gauntlet yesterday using Titanius, and I was also playing Titanius, and okay, sure, you can play Titanius, and maybe you get lucky, and maybe you'll get your, what do you call it, your Calamity, and do the 10 damage and whatever, but you're looking at 6 cards. I feel like the bigger target for me is dealing with Periwinkle in that deck, honestly, because like double Titanias or double any of the 5+ drops is just too much. You just can't come back from it. I mean, getting a lucky Titanias, yes, it's really bad, but there's also a chance that they're going to whiff on Titanias, even if you can't counter it, or if you can't deal with that huge drop that it produces for you to have to deal with. JJ, how do you feel about that statement that I made with Titanias?
I think it depends. Some of it depends on deck design choices that people have made. There are some people who go hog wild with the Titania and make it to where if they ever get Titania, they're virtually guaranteed to just win the game outright.
Right.
Some people who take a more mid-range approach, I guess, and say, you know, I want to be able to play these cards once in a while, so I may not necessarily just go hog wild with all of the beatable bombs at the top end. I may play a few things that I can reasonably, you know, play if I don't get the Titania itself, because you're not going to have it necessarily in the game.
Right.
So there's a couple of different ways that you can go with it. And it kind of depends. Like again, if they're the bomby top end one, then certainly having like the Martyr is really important. But,
right.
If they're not that version, then it's less critical.
I feel like the more bombs I play in the deck, the less consistent it becomes, and it's more like, okay, you better have ramp and Titanias in your opening hand, or you lose. Like you can't, you have to pitch a lot more hands that way. Like when I'm building the deck, like I built it with only 2. I'm only running 2. What's it called? The big guy.
Ozawa?
No, I'm only running 2 Walking Calamities in my version, and then all the rest is like, I feel like Crocosaur is like a bigger deal than Walking Calamity. Like Walking Calamity like wins games outright, but Crocosaur takes over board states. So I have to, you know, I played 4 of those, 4 of the Carnosaurus like he's playing. I was playing Lithe Lyricist for a little while, but I felt like that wasn't as good as some other options, and then I was also playing 4 Root Fathers there as well, because I feel like that's just an, you know, Root Father's great because when I shuffle it back into my deck, that's just one more card for what do you call it, for Titanias to find, and I can give it Spell Shield, and then like there's only one issue with it, which is it's a little bit buggy right now. Anytime you Titanias into something with sockets on it right now, it's kind of screwing the sockets up. So like I give it Spell Shield and Rhinos, so that way I can deal damage to my opponent and get a Rhino right away with Arborean Root Father, and then it's like also really difficult to deal with because it's got Spell Shield as well. But that isn't always what I get. Sometimes I just get random Ruby and Sapphire effects just because of Titania's interaction with it. So yeah, Ruby and Wild effects. Yeah, so that's my only issue with that. Periwinkle I found, like I thought was a 2 of or a max 3 of, and it apparently it's a 4 of because it has to be stopped in that deck. It just, you have to deal with it because double of any of the 5 drops is just too much. But yeah, that's just the way I play it. I also play with like very low amounts. Like I only play with I play with the 4 Titanias and then 2 what's it called? Eye of Creation. Yeah, just 2 Eye of Creation as well. I thought about going with 4. Originally I was playing 4 Eye of Creation and 2 Titanias and more ramp to hit more cards, but it felt like Titanias looks at 6 cards, which is probably better than most of the time at the beginning of the game, and you have to have so much resource production to overcome that with Eye of Creation that it's probably just more efficient.
Yeah, usually when you're looking at the small eyes, you're only likely to get one good target anyway. I
Yeah.
mean, you do get some of the lucky ones where
Yeah,
you
when you
have.
eye for 3 or something, you're like, ugh, you're really tempting fate, you know.
I
I
mean,
really,
sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll hit like triple calamity or something ridiculous when you do those, but that usually the more
yeah.
often one is you only get one thing or maybe even nothing.
You'll get
Some,
like a live lyricist or something. Yeah.
and it's not really what you're looking for.
I think this is interesting that he's not running, what's it called in that deck? He's not running the, what's it called guy? The guy that basically when you play him, it's for every elf you have, you get resources. Troubadour. Yeah, Troubadour I think is also a must for of in this deck. Because if you have 2 of them in play, they produce 4 resources, and you've had 3 already, so that's 7 resources. You can play everything in the deck except for Calamity, and a lot of times that's what's allowing you to play Calamity. And it plays ridiculous Eye of Creation, so we'll see if people start playing more of those. I'm playing 4 in mine. Trying to think of what else is really a big deal in this deck. I don't especially like Balthazar in the deck, but I'm sure it's fine. It's not a bad thing. Just because it feels like most of the time when I want to play him, it's like after a sweep. And if that happens, then I'm drawing 1 card. Like everything else feels like win more. It's like draw more cards, win more. You know?
I mean, the Balthazar is okay if you've got at least some kind of middle-sized troop. Like, just for example, if you had a Crocosar in play already.
Right, I mean, that's draw 5. That's pretty nice. But hopefully the Crocosaur has already got you the board state you need, I would think.
Yeah, but not always. Like, sometimes it's your last card, especially in constructed, like, when they've got the Inquisition or whatever that might strip your hand away. You might need a little bit more gas after that. So, I mean, Balthazar is still a perfectly fine card.
Sure. The Eternal Sage I haven't actually play tested with, and I was like, why is this in here? And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, I get it. Because if you copy 2 of them, you can sweep out your opponent's board state when you play a Ruby Shard.
Yeah, there's a couple. Yeah, like copying it with Periwinkle is a good thing.
Yeah.
Then the Ruby for 2 damage each troop kills a lot.
It does 1 damage for each troop, but then if you have 2, it's dealing 2.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, and that's, we've seen, like, you know, X2s are a lot of your buff type cards that are really making opponents' decks ridiculously strong. You know, we still have to think about things like Falconeer, and we still have to think about things like Cerulean Mirror Knight, and I don't know, there's probably a couple more. Yeah. Let's see. There's the Mono Blood deck in here, and that one was kind of interesting as well because it only ran 1 Vampire Princess. That's, I thought, was kind of interesting. Given that you knew that a lot of people were going to be playing these Titania decks. Let's see. I'm looking for it right now. Where is it? Here it is. The Concubine Yuka deck. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was Vic-Man's deck here. We never got to see it on stream. Unfortunately, I was really hoping we would get the opportunity to. But you know, one of the things that this deck has going for it, and I think some other people have figured out though, is that it's actually got the Demon of Dusk.
Yeah,
Even though there is certainly risk with it, I mean, whenever you're putting Celestials in your opponent's deck, there's a chance that they might get the Majesty to find it, or you know, have a big Eye of Creation to put into play. But the demon itself is a 6/6, which passes the Crocosar test.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good one. It can put a serious block on the opponent.
Yeah, I thought that was probably also the most interesting thing about the deck. It does have some what do you call it? Some discard with bloat caps and other stuff. Of course, there's no real sweep in the deck, and it's running 25 shards, which seems a little bit high, I guess. And it's, I guess, the first things it has to, like, it's got quite a few spot removal cards with your Vampire Kiss. Merciless Color is kind of an interesting one to make your opponent sacrifice a troop, so that gets around your Spell Shield troops. And then you've got Rotcast as well. It's kind of an important one, and Taint. Yep, and then 4 taints. So lots of spot removal mostly in there.
Yeah, it did actually have Noxious Glory for the aggro decks, or even for the Titania decks. Like, there are a lot of small elves that it could get rid of.
Moving on, let's see. The last deck I wanted to talk about was the one that Flipparian ran, which was I'm calling it the Tri-Wolves deck, the Tri-State Wolves deck. Basically, it's tricolor, your Wild, Sapphire, and Diamond deck, and it runs some interesting stuff. Like the Brown Fox Scout is pretty much like removal if your opponent's on the attack, because you can play it, right? Yeah, it's a quick troop, so you can play it in response to your opponent's attack phase, and you can kill stuff with it by blocking. Your typical Carnosaurus. I have Lixil as an interesting one to see in here. The nice thing about that is it prevents damage, so like it can actually block what's it called, the 10/10. I keep Calamity, right? It can block Calamity if you happen to have a Ruby Threshold.
Yeah, or Wild.
Or Wild. And it will just absorb all the damage, because Crush in this game doesn't crush over troops that absorb the damage. Let's see, what else?
It should be noted for anybody who plays Eye of Lixil, in your typical, Ruby Wild deck, if you have Eye of Lixil with a Wild Shard in play, that'll stop most of the threats, if not all of them, from your opponent. So it's a pretty good blocker.
Yeah. The Windsinger, Master of the Hunt, we did want to see this guy see some play, because it just, like, once you play it, you should have the game sealed up, just because you're just drawing 2 cards for every 1 card your opponent's drawing on their draw phase, and then if they happen to have any card draw beyond that, you basically just match them. So you should be able to stay ahead on card advantage, and as everybody knows, if you stay ahead on card advantage and can at least go card for card or better with your opponent, you're basically going to win the game. So kind of an exciting one to see someone actually play in a deck.
Yeah, Windswinger is really sweet. I played some test games with that, against it actually. I was playing my old Mastery of Time combo deck just to see if I could make it viable, and quickly realized that with Windsinger I was never going to be able to play my key cards, because I was drawing
drawing too many cards.
Draw too many cards, give all those cards to my opponent, and it doesn't matter if I take all the turns, because they keep resetting their resources every turn with Windsinger in play.
Right.
So that aside, it is a good card in other matchups as well, for similar reasons, being able to hold up the counter magic after you have it in play, or whatever other quick actions or quick troops that you have there. Yeah, it's a sweet one.
You guys are going to laugh, but like another exciting card that I see in here is the Arcane Focus, because I kind of want to see this card in control type decks. Of course, this isn't really control, or maybe a combo type deck, because it just has a lot of really nice deck manipulation.
I would call this a control deck. I think as far as what this format was, this would be I would consider.
Right. Well, yeah, because it had good answers to when someone got a good Titanius, because you had your Martyrs, your Pride's Fall, and your Throwback.
Right.
Quite a few spot removal cards there. And that's the thing. So the ESL, so everyone knows, is the Electronic Sports League. There's a link in the Hex notes. I posted something on Reddit this week, so that way people could be redirected over to their website, but I'll also post a link down in this when this gets syndicated to YouTube, so make sure to look for that link so you can start doing the ESL. The ESL is every Sunday night, or Sunday morning if you decide to do the European League, and it starts at, for me, Central Time, it starts at 7 o'clock. It's single elimination, and it's constructed, and you can change your deck in between, and then in between matches, it's basically a best of 3, and you can do reserves, but you have to screenshot everything. So you need to screenshot your deck. You probably need to screenshot your opponent. Whenever you win a match, you should probably screenshot that. I'll be recording all my matches, so it's probably less of an issue for me. Plus, I'll be posting them. But yeah, you should make sure that you have proof of your matches, because there can be people there that decide that they're going to not be upstanding citizens and honest about things. And then yeah, I mean, it's a little bit annoying for me because I do have work the next day, and because of where my computer sits, it's hard for me to play late at night now. But yeah, just let me know your thoughts on that. Of course, JJ, you played in the ESL last week, and we talked about it for a minute before the show. But you know, what were your thoughts?
I think it's awesome that they're going to have this weekly constructed tournament like this, and I'm looking forward to playing in it again this week. From what I can tell, it looks like there's going to be points, and then there's going to be, I don't know if invitational is the right word, but there's going to be other cups that are going to have, looks like a threshold that you have to get into it with a certain amount of points or so. So definitely going to keep playing in those and hope to qualify for that.
And then this week we've got we're ready to move into the deck doctor. So I have a really interesting challenge this week. A lot of people have been excited about the spiders. So I got this from, looks like Crazy Gandhi on Reddit submitted this deck list to me. So it's basically just a lot of spiders and a lot of eggs, and that's what we're going to be doing the deck doctor on tonight. So JJ's here to help me along with that, and yeah, we'll see what we can do with this. So yeah, not a very good segue there. I should have done a better job moving from one subject to the other, but we're here now. We're talking about the deck. So right off the bat, JJ, I'm going to say the first things, if we were to up this deck, is going to definitely cost more, because it only costs like $9. That's the estimated value of this deck. But first things first, we're running all spiders. We're not running the spider dual shard, which is kind of a big deal. And then on top of that, we're not running we're running 61 cards, so we kind of need to pare that down. So yeah, that's going to be like the first thing. Let's see. So probably add in this Zin'xith Silk. That would probably be the first thing. Now this is going for $1.35, but that's reasonable for a resource. This resource is probably not going to see a lot of play until people figure out how to use spiders properly. And you know, playing with resources like this, where they require that you have X number of troops in your deck that have that allegiance, I found that 12 to 14 was okay. It worked most of the time when I really needed it to, and that was fine for me running the Ruby Wild deck. What do you think about that, JJ?
Yeah, my rule of thumb would be somewhere around 14 as well. Usually, if I want to be able to choose either resource threshold on the first turn, which is one of the most important turns, 14 is usually the line that I would set. So yeah, I think that's fine.
Let's see, so let's find the other one. And then the other one is the uncommon from the last set, which will be even cheaper. So let's go ahead and put those in here right away. And basically, Shards of Fate is, unless you are running some sort of 5 shard deck like these days, Shards of Fate is basically fallen out of favor, mostly because it's not going to give us a charge for the turn. You could run it in here if that's all you've got, but I would suggest getting a hold of, if you want to be competitive, you're going to want to get your Shard of Cunning, so that way you can get that for your resources right away. It's not going to, it's a little bit slower than the one we just looked at, because we don't get the resource that turn, but it's going to make the deck so much more consistent that it's kind of a must for me. Maybe you could go down to like 2 of these instead of 4 if you really need to play things every turn, but I feel like 4 is perfectly fine.
Right. So as far as the threshold, the resource base, you know, one of the things you always got to look at are what are the thresholds I need to hit for my deck. If I need to hit both double blood and double sapphire, which we do have in this deck, I would say the minimum number that I would try to get to is 18 of each if I can. With the dual shards, you can kind of sort of count those as both. That's usually what I do, because when you're playing the game, you can make the choice for whichever one is more important at the time that you have. So if you're playing the 4 Shard of Cunning, and you're playing the 4 Silk, that's 8 sources for each. That would, if you're going to play a 24 shard deck, that would be 8 of each that you could do. That's a little bit light for being able to get the threshold that you need, but that's pretty close. That's pretty close.
Okay. So now I'm going to go and we need to figure out if we're going to be some sort of aggro stall or some sort of stall deck, or if we're going to be control deck or some other stuff. And we're going to look through some of these spiders that we've already got in here. Most likely we're trying to stall the game out and just deny our opponents. So it feels more like control to me. Looking through the list, JJ, I mean, what did you think? I mean, there's some things in here which we just, in the current meta with the way things are, I don't think we can play.
Yeah, so let's just say it for what it is, right? Right now, you always have to keep in mind Titania's Majesty and that deck when you're building your decks. So, what are some of the things that we can do with this deck that line up well against it? So, one of the things you can do is you can pollute your opponent's deck with lots of spiders, so that makes it less likely that they hit something awesome off of their Majesty. So, for example, a card like Incubate is probably still fine, even though I oftentimes, I'll just be honest, I don't play that very often in draft, but here it might be okay because it's something that does actually help make the Majesty card itself weaker. We don't necessarily need to have a ton of verdicts in our hand if we can make it where they're not going to hit something good. Probably the most important card, though, is actually Exarch of the Egg. I would say that is a card where if you're playing this deck against this field, you've got to have 4 of them. It is going to be good against both Majesty and Ruby aggro style decks, where you can go and stop their biggest ground guy. Against Majesty, that might mean a Root Father, for example, which might be their only threat at the time that they play it.
Trades for everything.
It trades for all of those things. Yeah, it also survives, burn and heat wave. So it's relatively resilient, and of course, it also makes spiraling eggs as well. So it really hits all of the buttons that we want to hit with this deck. That definitely needs to be a foil if you're going to play a deck like this.
I love this card. One of the cards I think that just does not work at all here is Harbinger of Hastur. It says when it attacks, exhaust up to 5 target troops. Okay, that's great as a control card, but that's really not what we're doing. Like, we're playing more stall type of things. And it has a 20% chance as long as you have Sapphire at the start of each opposing champion turn if it's in the top 5 cards of your deck. So basically, you're going to broadcast to your opponent that it's in the top 5 cards of your deck, so it's coming, and then reveal it, exhaust a random troop your opponent controls. Now, I've had someone do this to me in a limited format, and that was great for them. It worked really well, but in here, like, this may stall, but most of the time it's going to sit in your hand and probably not do very much of anything because you're not like using Extinction. We're not using any type of counter magic or anything else to stall the game out. So I think we have to say goodbye to Harbinger of Hastur.
Yep, that makes sense to me. It's just very slow in this format.
Yeah, and
even if it was more effective, which I don't think that it is. I mean, the 20% chance it just isn't real very.
It's not worth it. Yeah, maybe if it was 50%, and then like if it was the top 10 cards, then maybe.
Yeah, that would be a very different card.
It'd be a very different card.
We might be having a different conversation, but it's definitely nowhere near.
When a spider comes into your play, okay, so now we're looking at Vilefang Eremite, and it says when a spider comes into play under your control, it deals 1 damage to opposing champion, gain health, equal damage dealt this way. This may help you hold on to board states, but it doesn't really feel like it's getting you to the overall goal of the deck of like trying to put spiders into play and other stuff like this. If you're going to play this at all, I played it in the reserves against the burn matchup, and that would be it. That I don't really see Vilefang Eremite making the main deck at all.
Now, that one I would respectfully disagree. And here's
okay.
So on that card, it is possible that you can take an approach where you're going to try to be a combo style deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know because I haven't actually tried to do this myself, but obviously in limited I've done it. You can go with the Ozen Champion Power, and you can put that on Vilefang Eremite, and you can create your own Psychic Torment on a troop. Psychic Torment, of course, is also in this deck currently. If you decided that you wanted to do that, excuse me, you could have the 4 Torments and the 4 Eremites. You could go with the Ozen Champion Power, and you could say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try to be sort of a more combo-y egg style of deck and hope to... I don't think you're going to bury them out ever because the opponent has the Calamity itself, so they'll always have cards that are remaining in their deck that they can have left. but you might be able to get enough eggs out and spiderlings out that you'll be able to actually just burn them out, so to speak.
Right.
So if you can get enough spiders in their deck, it is possible that you could have the Torment plus Eremites actually go and burn them out there.
Yeah, so this guy says, so your Patriot of Ozin that he was talking about, costs 2 charges, so very cheap. You only need 1 blood threshold, very easy to get to. Target troop gets, when this deals damage to a champion, bury the top card of that champion's deck. Yeah, I could see that. Is there one that puts spiders in the deck?
There is. Zorzym would be the Blood Sapphire, 3 charges, and would allow you to put 3 Spiderling eggs into opponent's deck.
Yeah, so you could go with either one of those. I personally, like, if I'm trying to go with the spider thing, I think I might try to Zorzym first and then try the other one. I'm kind of leaning more towards Zorzym, personally.
Yeah, again, one of the strengths of Zorzym as a champion would be making your opponent's Majesties and Eyes a lot worse, so they wouldn't get as much use out of them.
I don't know why my deck is, like, not updating very easily here for some reason. I have to keep refreshing. Let's see, what else have we got in here?
Yeah, I think Eremite's probably pretty good for the main deck, regardless of which direction you go. Whether you go controlling or if you go, sort of combo-y, because I think it's going to be...
Would you run a 4 of? I think I wouldn't run... I don't know. If I was going to play this card, I'd still play it in the reserves, but... But would you play 4 of in yours?
Yeah.
We'll make JJ's deck. We'll make JJ's deck.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so... I haven't actually, like I said, I was talking to JJ before, like I haven't studied a lot of the Sapphire and Blood stuff. I haven't spent a lot of time because I just get excited about Wilds right now too much. Probably a little bit too much, but let's see. We were talking about Touch of Xentoth already. So you can basically make something unblockable with Spiderling Eggs. It's a buff card, so that's my only issue with it. If I was going to play this at all, I'd play 1 of it because I just don't like giving my opponent a chance at a 2-for-1. Like, how strong is this really? It's not changing board states. I still have the same troop in play.
Yeah, Touch of Xentoth is a card that I don't care for as much.
Yeah, it's cute.
The best case. I mean, I get what the deck builder was thinking here, because you can put more eggs into your opponent's deck, and of course you can always hit them with whatever troop it is you want to hit them with. The downside, unfortunately, for this particular card is that if you look at the troops in the deck here, we have most of the troops are 1 or 2 attack. They're just not going to be able to deal a whole lot of damage.
Yeah.
So it would say you would create a Spiderling egg for each damage dealt and put them into their deck. It's going to be maximum 2 from most of the troops in the deck, or even 1. So
you know where I would play this card, this Touch of Xentoth, and it would be solely for the unblockable, is I would throw it in some sort of a Ruby aggro deck where I have like some sort of troop that's coming into play with like 3 or 4 front end. Yeah, right. I would play it in that like deck.
Yep.
Just for the unblockable, and it's really easy to get to with 2 in Blood, but I just don't see it happening here.
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of sticks out to me is the Eggblight Afflictor. Again, as far as generators of eggs, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's great, but
the problem for this card is that it's not defensive. It literally cannot block, and we don't really have any uses for sacrificing in this deck.
Yeah.
If we did have those kinds of cards, maybe I would keep this in here. But for this deck, this is not really an attacking deck.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a stalling deck, and it doesn't really fit into that overall strategy. So I would say that would be a card we probably want to replace.
Now on the flip side, Eggblight Afflictor is an amazing card for limited formats, but in here, yeah, I agree, it's not the greatest. Blood Baron, at the start of your turn, create a copy of each egg in target opposing champion's deck and put them into their deck. Then, if there are 250 or more eggs in that champion's deck, destroy them. That's cute. That's never going to happen. He's a good blocker. He's an okay body. But for 5, we could be doing better in other things, like maybe playing Extinction or playing, what's it, Xentoth's Inquisitor or something like that. I just don't see for the cost him being worth it.
Yeah, he will definitely create a lot of Spiderling eggs. But yeah, if in order for him to work out, which he could, you would have to have a deck with a lot of controlling elements, probably more than what we have here so far. If you wanted to play
he feels like a card you would play almost by himself in a control deck, like, you know, because like you could just have him in play and then just defend like with counter magic and stuff, and you know, it just feels better. But even then, it's like, well, if you're doing that, then you might as well play like Reese or something else. So,
well, the one thing that is interesting that should be pointed out, it does say create a copy of each egg in target opposing team.
Oh, so you have to have some eggs already there.
Well, that's true, but that's not what I was going to say. The interesting thing is, if you happen to have Phenteo and put Phenteo into the deck, then it would create double of the Tarantula eggs.
Ooh, yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
So if you especially have Phenteo, the Brood Baron gains some additional value there from being able to double up all of the eggs. So I actually think it's probably okay for what this deck's trying to do. It's certainly it's not the biggest body, and it does die to a fair number of things, including Professor, but it is still in line with what the deck is trying to do.
So we'll just keep one of those for now. I think like he's kind of like a top end buff that's trying to finish the game out anyways, and like, yeah, we'll just keep one of those. Let's see. So Phenteo, the Brood Priest, is one that's not in this deck. It's kind of one of the more expensive cards right now. Like, this is going to make the deck much more expensive than it is now. Its auction house price right now is $9. Create 3 Tarantula eggs for each opposing champion. Put them into your decks. If there is a deck out there that actually will be good, that runs the spiders that are going into my opponent's deck, it's probably going to run Phenteo. He's unique, so maybe you just run 2 or 3 of them. Maybe 3 probably would be optimal, I would say, for this type of deck. But I think he's kind of a must if you really actually want to do this deck.
Yeah, he's really good in this type of deck. I mean, to just be considerate of the budget, because I don't know if there is one for this. I think it would be, I mean, it would definitely make the deck a lot better. If you're able to play it, you should. And I definitely think it would be a 3-up, but you could maybe try it without. But yeah, he's very, very good. And also the fact that he's Venom, so he would also trigger off of Exarch of the Egg, which we've already said we want to play for sure.
Yeah.
Along with the fact that he makes the Tarantulas and that has the synergy with the Brood Baron. He would be very good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you would need more than 3. Running just 1 would be fine. 2 would be okay, and then 3 would be like, you know, your top tier. Like, I'm going all in on this strategy type of deck. And I have basically, if I need to buy something, I will just buy it. Let's see what else. We talked about Painbreeder yet. When the spider enters play under your control, it gets +1/+1. I actually like this card. I like this card. I like making my spiders 2/2s. It makes them better blockers. I can block with, like, so probably one of the best things about playing spiders is you have so many blockers with them. You don't, and they're unblockable. They're 1/1 unblockables, but this just makes them even better. I actually kind of like this card. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, this card is good for the deck. There's so many solid 3-drops for the deck that you could play. You probably have to make some hard choices. You know, there's the Phenteo, which we've already talked about, which costs 3. Vilefang Eremite, which costs 3. Painbreeder, which costs 3. We didn't talk about it yet, but this deck probably wants to play some number of Murder, which also costs 3.
Yeah.
And then there's also Hatchery Priest, which again has good synergy with Phenteo or with the not the Hatchery Priest, the Cultivator. Sorry. So the Cultivator is the 3-drop 2/4 that will allow you to put an extra egg into the deck every time that you generate an egg. So that would also have some additional synergy that you could potentially play.
Right. Psychic Torment is a constant chaos touch. When an opposing champion is dealt damage, bury the card from their deck and put it for each damage dealt. I just don't see it. It's just, it's not gonna help us out with board states when we need to block things and actually like affect board states. It's a buff that's not gonna be good enough to like push us over the top. With what we're doing, we should be good enough without it anyways. Any other thoughts, JJ, on Psychic Torment? So 2 cost 1 Sapphire threshold. It doesn't change any board states. It just simply says when opposing champion is dealt damage, bury a card from the top of their deck. It just buries cards. That's all it does.
So
for each damage dealt.
Yeah, it Psychic Torment and Lunacy both fall into sort of the same bucket. If you're trying to go with the combo egg route and try to get as many eggs as possible, as fast as possible, then you would play both of those cards. If you're trying to play more of a controlling deck, Lunacy definitely is not good enough. Psychic Torment is a little more questionable as well, too.
I definitely like Lunacy over Psychic Torment, because burying 5 cards seems reasonably good compared to, like, if I deal damage, I can bury cards, because there's a very good chance you're not going to be able to deal any damage. Very good chance of that.
Yeah, the reason that I do still like Torment as a card overall is just because of Vilefang Eremite. The combination of those 2 cards together can give you a potential explosive kill on the opponent there. If you get an egg, the Eremite triggers, you get another egg, trigger, and potentially burn them out from one or a couple of small attackers there.
So this is probably one of the best removal cards in here, although it costs a lot. The Incubation Webs, this card, especially in Limited, is like probably top tier removal, honestly. Exhaust target opposing troop it gets at the start of its turn. Exhaust this, then create a spiraling egg and put it into your deck. The only thing that could have made this any better is if it was quick action speed, so that way you could exhaust in response to that giant Titania's Majesty card that just got, you know, thrown in your face. But yeah, I think Incubation Webs could definitely go up to at least a 3 of, possibly a 4 of in here.
Yeah, and you already nailed the head. That's the problem with the card, is the fact that it says basic.
Yeah.
If it had this effect and cost 4 and was quick, you would still consider it. But at basic speed, it's a little bit tough. You have to have a way to survive the initial onslaught, which it is possible. But I mean, it's good if you do happen to survive the Calamity swing. Then it is good removal to be able to
yeah, you can at least deal with the Calamity now. Yeah. But chances are pretty good you're not going to survive the Calamity swing unless you have more than 20 life. Next, we've got the Hatchery Priest. It's an 0/2. It allows you to create spiraling eggs every turn. You could attack with it if you could buff it somehow. I'm just not seeing it. It really needed to be like an 0/4. It's what it needed to be for it to have been playable. But it's not playable. It's just too weak.
Yeah, it gets better if you're going to play Hatchery Priest. I think you're trying to go the combo route, and you probably want the Cultivator in your deck as well, because then the Priest creates that additional egg at the turn. If you're going to play this card, I do agree though that most of the time I would probably rather play like another cheap removal in that spot instead.
So Inquisitor has lost a lot of value lately, so you can pick up a playset of these very, very cheaply. If you don't have the money for Phenteo, get yourself some Inquisitors, because like Inquisitor is still really good. Now I would probably still run Brutality with them because it just debuffs things so well and holds on to board states and it blocks things really well. I would still play it in here as a 4 of, probably, maybe a 2 of, but yeah. Inquisitor, if you haven't bought him, like he's still going to be playable for a very long time. For the Venom deck, he's still pretty good. He lost a lot of value because there's a lot of things that can what is it called? Bring things back. They can what do you call it? When you reset the troop, they can reset troops. Revert. Yeah, there's a lot of reversion effects right now and some other things, and like Inquisitor is very, very slow, and so like when your opponent's going to kill you all in one turn with like Calamity plus Titanias, like it doesn't really help with that situation. But still a really good thing to have, especially if you're going to have the extinctions and some other things that we'll probably end up looking at in this deck. Another card is Inquisition. That's going to be a big one in the playoffs. I think that anyone that's running Blood is probably going to run 3 or 4 of these now, just because of Titanias and Calamity. This is the #1 card you want to play against that strategy because it hits both the big troops and Titanias or your Eye of Creation cards. Yeah. What's the other one? The other discard card that costs 1.
So you're talking about Withering Touch.
Withering Touch. So my thoughts on Withering Touch, and this is mostly from just my Titania's deck, is that it's a max 2 of, because I've had a lot of times where someone will Withering Touch me and all I've got is troops in my hand. And I only run 6 spells. So unless you hit Titanias with it, like it's kind of a wasted turn, but not really, because at least you get information on your opponents, like what they're going to do the next couple of turns. But I don't know that I always feel bad like when it doesn't hit. So I don't know. JJ, how do you feel about it in the current meta, Withering Touch?
I mean, Withering Touch is still, yeah, the decks can be built where it's not going to hit consistently, and it can sometimes be a blank card, which does stand.
It gives you information. I mean, at least it does that all the time, right? I mean, you always get to see.
It always tells you what actions they have or don't have.
Right. Like, it's much better. Gains this card in like game 1 is much better against like Mono Sapphire or let's see, probably most Ruby decks, because they're probably running 12 direct damage spells in there. But against Titanias, I just don't. I would side out and go down to 1 or none of these in games 2 and 3.
Yeah, it depends on what version they're playing. I think it's still pretty good overall. There's certainly targets for it, like the Titania's Majesty itself and Eye of Creation are both good targets for that.
So
I mean,
a couple.
Sometimes the worst case is like you hit a Chlorophilia, but or nothing at all. But I mean, you can still hit Chlorophilia, which is sometimes relevant as well.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to really look at here. I put in 2 murders. I should probably pull 1 Incubation Web, and actually I should probably just play a playset of murder, honestly. What do you think?
Yeah, murder is just
it's kind of a big deal with, again, we're just mostly looking at Titanias, but it also gets rid of Reese, the Crust Crawler. It gets rid of you know, you're a little bit late for Cerulean Mirror Knight, but it does deal with him. It deals with what do you call it, Falconeer. Yeah.
Yep, murder's nice, solid removal. For sure.
Let's see. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and go down 1 Withering Touch, but that's my own personal feeling. Like, I wouldn't fault anyone for playing 2 in the main deck. Like, these cards are going to be huge. Also, Counter Magic, we didn't put any in the deck. You could also go that route as well. But I don't know that I'm not sure that I want to be. You need to be able to play cards like every turn in this deck. We're trying to play these troops every turn, and so a lot of times you're not going to be sitting there being the control person. But you could always have them in the reserves for, you know, your different matchups. You know, you could put what do you call it, Verdict of the Ancient Kings in your reserves. I'm going to go ahead and pull some rares here. We'll probably pull the Phenteos down to 1. Again, I could play up to 3 of these. We're going to pull 1, put them down to 1 just because of cost right now, but you honestly probably want to play at least 2 of these in the deck. I'm also going to pull some Inquisitors here. We're trying to get the deck so it's like down to the proper deck size. Our curve looks pretty good with we're going 5 to a 16. The 3-point range needs some work. We definitely need to look at a card in there or 2. We're at 24 shards. We could probably pull a shard here. What do you think about the deck right now, JJ? In fact, I'll just post it to you. We're about to end the show here anyways.
Yeah, I don't think I would pull a shard. I think we're at 24 currently, which I think is the
we
right
are at 24.
Yeah, I think 24 is the right number for this.
Trying to think of what else we could pull in here. We've been through all the cards that are. We could probably pull an Incubate. You know, it's good, but it again doesn't immediately affect board states. It's a nice turn 1 to be like, all right, here they come. Here come the spiders. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, there's a couple of different cards that you could shave a few numbers of. And we didn't even talk about it yet, but the Webguard itself is pretty nice. It's pretty nice when you're able to exhaust down their big attackers. The only real problem with it is making sure that you have the effect when you need it.
Talking about Incubation Webs? You said Webguard. Is that a card? that I don't... Oh, wait, here it is. Nazhk Webguard. Okay.
Yeah, Nazhk Webguard. So Nazhk Webguard will exhaust its troops
pretty amazing,
when a spider enters play. If you haven't seen it before, it might be that you were playing drafts in the early times. It actually was in there in the original patch because there was a problem where it was locking up games. But it's in there now, and you can play it. But regardless, the card is pretty good. It's definitely good tempo, but you have to be able to get the consistent spiders out of it and get it when you need it. So it's the kind of card where if the game goes on to multiple turns and you can get a spider each turn, it's good. But it is potentially a spot that we could shave down for consistency of saying, hey, I want to have something that I can have all the time. Could potentially be something like maybe a throwback or a time ripple type of card.
Time ripple would probably be optimal, yeah.
A similar type of effect when you need it, because again, with Majesty, even excuse me, even if you have the Webguard out, and let's say you do hit the one spider that you want, it won't happen at the time that you need it. So the opponent will play the Majesty in their first main, and then the spider's already come and gone from their draw step at that point. So it's really not quite doing what it is that your deck needs it to do. And something like a ripple or a throwback would probably work better there.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and close out the episode. The deck is playable. It's got a decent curve on it. It's probably PvE playable. It would need a lot of adjustments and other work, but it's definitely going to do a lot better for you. So I hope that you enjoy this deck. Let's see, it was Crazy Gandhi submitted this deck to me. I hope it's not too expensive. Looks like we went from a $9 deck up to a $30 deck. So for $20, around abouts, you can upgrade your deck and get it to pretty playable stats. And a lot of these are gold type cards that you can get. And for submitting this to me, you're going to win either a draft pack or your choice of, I'm going to go ahead and open one of these convocation packs. And I'll be opening one of these at the end, so make sure you're sticking around. I've got 20 of them that I picked up from the convocation events at GenCON. Let's go ahead and do the shards real quick before we close things out. It looks like we've only got 13 Sapphire Shards, so probably the split is going to be something like a 6, let's see, a 6-10 split is probably what it's going to be.
That makes sense. And
yeah,
we only have one card that needs double Sapphire. That's the Incubation Webs. So
yeah, and you may not even, you may play with Incubation Webs and just be like, this is just too slow to deal with stuff. Don't take this into the what do you call it, the asynchronous constructed just yet. You need to really work this out and make sure that it's good to go, but do find yourself a good play group. It can be very difficult to do so, but we have had some pretty good articles that have been written on the 5shards.com by Zubrin. I believe that's the last one that was written, where it talks about play groups and stuff, because you really need to play this against players that are playing serious decks, people that have those Ruby Wild decks that are just a little bit more expensive. Those are probably in that, hovering around that $100 range for those decks, because if it can't deal with that deck, or if it doesn't have at least a 50%, you need to go back to the drawing board on it. I guess like a 45% would probably be acceptable, but as long as this deck slaughtered the rest of the range. This is probably barely tier 2 kind of a deck, but
Can I mention one last card before we go?
Go ahead.
There's another card that also would fit into this, which is called Arachnophobia.
Mm-hmm.
Arachnophobia is both discard, which is nice against Titania, and it is also Egg Generation. So there's another card that you should consider for this deck as well. The downside of Arachnophobia is that you don't get to choose what cards you're getting out of the opponent's hand. So it could end up helping them by putting Calamities back into their deck.
Right.
But overall, I would say it's usually pretty good by taking out either a couple of their big guys from their hand and removing them from future draws, and of course giving them the couple of spider eggs in their deck too.
Yeah, the only other issue I see with Arachnophobia is I would only run like a max 2 of, just because it costs 3, and chances are they've dumped out their hand by turn 4. And if you top deck this or something else, I mean, if you're playing this on turn 3 or you have a lot of turn 3 cards to begin with, it just feels like it may be a little bit too slow for a good discard to me.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. So, but at least it's something that the deck builders should keep in mind as a
yeah, I like it. I definitely think it fits. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't play more than 2 of. Other cards you could look at were Extinction, and of course any counter magic and any other things that you think fit the meta. Basically, you're looking for answers to Titanias on turn 2 is what you're really looking for, so that way when they play it on turn 3 you have a good answer for it, or you've already sniped it out of their hand on turn 2. So tonight on Deck Build the Squire, we had JJ come on the show, which was pretty awesome. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about some of the PvE content. We talked about Sirius getting exalted, which is, again, congratulations, Sirius. We are moving, of course, to Saturdays. This is our very first Saturday show for Decking with the Squire. It's going to be like this for a little while just because of my work schedule. And then we talked about the 5 Shards tournament and some of the different things with the meta that will be going on, some of the interesting stuff that happened there. Of course, it's going to be much different when we have full access to sets 1 through 3. And then we also mentioned the ESL, and if you haven't signed up for that, I encourage you to get out there and do that. It's free, and for every person that signs up, the prize pool can only get bigger. At least for now, it's free, and in the future, we'll see if it changes. And that was pretty much it. JJ, do you have anything else to add before we go?
No. Actually, I did think of one other thing. ESL has another feature that's called a ladder system. So it's a constructed ladder. You can go in and you can say, hey, I want to play some constructed, set up a time when you want to play. It's anonymous, and people can sign up and say, hey, I want to battle this person at this time. You don't know who it is until after you've accepted it. And
that may be more acceptable for me.
Yeah, well, exactly. You can say, hey, I have time.
I have this time open. Yeah.
Monday night at whatever time, right? So you could do something like that and still get some competitive play in there too. So.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Aaron Squire signing off, saying God bless you and your family. He's trying to rage too much out there, and JJ does not have a sign off, right? JJ, you have a sign off? You do not have a sign off.
Maybe we should come up with one.
You should come up with one. Everyone should get one. I keep pushing people to get one.
Be good to your fellow Hex players.
There you go. Be good to each other.